welcome to another Gimme 5 podcast. I'm here in sunny Macon, and Gaz is on location in Doncaster. And when we first talked about this show, Gaz, there was one name that sprung to mind, because this has been said to be a show about nothing, a bit like Seinfeld in that regard. And I think that's a bit harsh, because it's far from about nothing. It's about lists and passions and guilty pleasures. And there was one particular list maker who sprang straight into my mind, and I just thought, if we can get him on this show, it's going to be manna from heaven, and we've nailed it. We have got him. I'm talking about an absolute legend. He was a bustler, by the way. I picked this up from Wikipedia. His style of football was bustling, and that was what made him a fan favourite at Huddersfield and at Wolves, and of course at Burnley. And he is also a legend on the after-dinner speaking circuit. Please say hello, everybody, to Steve Kindon.
Hey. Hiya, Rod. Hiya, Gary. Thanks for that, Rod. Thank you.
Great to have you here, mate.
Hey, Rod, the thing about getting Kindle on this is keeping him down to picking 4 categories. He loves a list.
Yeah, well, you know, this is one of the things we've always had a great pleasure, Gaz and I, sitting at these dinners, rubbing shoulders with the great and the good from the football game and other industries as well. But you in particular, Steve, I think you would make everybody's dinner list, you know, of great people to sit alongside. Always great company, but always loads to say on all manner of subjects.
Well, it's surprising. I'm not very technical, Rod, but we're doing this on a Zoom meeting. And for the last 15 months, I've got a nephew who lives in London. Most of my family live in Lancashire, but that would be in Warrington and Wigan and Parbold. I've got family living in Burnley, and I've got family living in Germany and Edinburgh. And so I've concocted a quiz once a month for all the family. And it's been magnificent, as far as I'm concerned, to see all the family together. And I've enjoyed concocting quizzes. But my little trick for a quiz, if I said to you, what year was the Battle of Hastings?
Okay. And
you'd say 1066, most people would know immediately. If I asked you who won the FA Cup in 1938, you probably wouldn't know.
Gaz might know that one.
Yeah, was it?
He's a bit older than
William the Conqueror.
It was Preston North End.
Oh, that's
what I was going to say is, what I'm trying to say is, with a quiz, ask a question, you either know it or you don't.
Yeah.
The very first question in my quiz 15 months ago was, name the last 10 prime ministers of this country.
Okay.
So it's one question with 10 answers. And the beauty of the answers are, you're just not going to say, I don't know. You're probably going to name Boris Johnson and David Cameron and Tony Blair and Margaret Thatcher without too much thought. And that actually drags you into the question.
Yeah.
I've got your interest because you've already named 4. Oh, Theresa May was one, wasn't she? That's 5. Oh, and I forgot about Gordon Brown, 6.
Yes.
You're locked in. You're locked in.
And the fact that you put in a bit of thought into it, because, you know, you get so many of these generic quizzes, and in the end, I think everybody has heard the same questions time and again, but you're actually putting a bit of yourself into them, which is lovely.
Of course, one of the massive problems I've had throughout the months, my family are not particularly sport-minded.
Okay.
My niece's partner, Dave, is mad keen on football. Jonathan's mad keen on cricket. But apart from those two, so I've not been able to ask any sporting questions.
I thought you were going to say for a second that none of my family are very bright. And I thought...
No, I've concentrated a lot on geography. My favourite subject is history, and then politics. It's been truly great for me, and I think, well, I know that all the families enjoyed it as well.
Brilliant.
I think we're all doing. We're in a coronavirus quiz WhatsApp group, and we do it once a month now. We used to do it 3 times a week on the first lockdown, where one person would do 6 rounds of questions, and now we do it once a month, where you do 1 round each, 10 questions. and each 8 that are still, there's only 8 left. We started off with about 40 in this quiz. There's 8 left, and we do like 1 round each, and it could be anything. And it's good. It's just something to do.
Good. Yeah, terrific. Yeah.
Well done, Steve. Well, they've obviously been well entertained, the Kindon family. But now we're going to offer the same kind of entertainment to our listeners here, because Gaz is going to do a brief, I'm sure he's told you already, but for those playing the home game, this is how it works.
This is exactly how it works. We give the categories to our guests. They pick 4. The last one has to be dinner guests. That's 5 people, dead or alive, that you want to share and chat and muse over things with. The 4 categories that Steve has chosen are books, our first books of the series.
What's that say about the show?
You are.
What does that say about the show?
Exactly. Films, which I think everyone goes for films, comedians, and songs. So we're going to start off with your 5 favourite books, Steve.
Okay. In no particular order.
Yeah, okay.
Seabiscuit.
Oh, Seabiscuit.
I love the film. Absolutely loved the film.
I loved the film, and the book is better.
Right.
Animal Farm.
Animal Farm.
George Orwell. What was it exactly about that? Because
again, Rod?
It's still got that sinister undertone, but it was prophetic at the time, because things are turning out to be very much, like a bit of a nanny state, isn't it? Here, and
I'll tell you a story about it, which is very important in my life, Rod. Anyway, third one, as I say, no particular. Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Jonathan Living. When you mentioned this to me, I apologise. I have never heard of this book, but I can't wait to find out more about it.
Well, I was praying that when you mentioned that title, Ian Parsons, our producer, he's got a parrot, and I would have loved it if it had just chipped in as you mentioned Seagull. Then it wouldn't have been.
Shit house.
The next one isn't easy for me to say. Shogun. 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 About the Japanese military leader.
Gary loved Showgirls. That was a different film, though, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, I love all that, me.
And I'd be hard-pressed, I've got to say, lads, to pick out any one book. This lady wrote over 70 books. And her name's Agatha Christie.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Barbara Cartland then.
Pick out any Agatha Christie, and it'll be a cracking read.
So can we pick out? Is it 10 Little Indians? Was that?
Yeah, let's just 10 Little Indians was.
I don't think the.
It's not called that anymore. It's called.
No.
And then there were none, I think.
That's right.
So they were afraid of upsetting Indians, but now obviously the nuns are up in arms.
Yeah.
Seabiscuit. What's so good about the book Seabiscuit?
A friend of mine who's since passed away, actually, a friend of mine called Alan Murray, big Wolverhampton Wanderers supporter. We've always in our lives exchanged books, in as much as, oh, Alan, I read this book last week. You ought to read it. It's fabulous. And we had a similar taste. Alan came to me when Seabiscuit first came out. He said, Steve, I've bought you this book. I said, what do you mean? Bought me the book? You usually would read yours and give it me. No, he says, I'm never letting this copy of Seabiscuit go. As soon as I read it, I started it again and read it again.
Wow.
So he gave me this brand new book, and I did exactly what Alan had done. I read it to its conclusion, and I started it again the same. I think I left the chair and got myself a sandwich and started the book again. I can remember during the first reading of the book, literally laughing out loud and also crying and weeping. It's so well written, and the story is just unbelievable, and it's a true story.
There was the film bit when I think it's Tobey Maguire played.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name. It was
Red, the jockey.
Correct, and then he got injured just before. Was it
the big race?
Yeah.
Seabiscuit was a hero of the West, California.
Yeah.
And there was this war admiral that was a hero of the East, and the East, of course, was more proper and a proper race courses, and we must do it this way and we must do it that way, whereas the Westerners were a little bit more off the hook and off the shoulder. Anyway, Seabiscuit challenged this war admiral, and war admiral, the race was at its home ground, war admiral's home track. All the rules, the length of the race suited war admiral. Everything was geared for a war admiral victory. And he was in New York training for this thing, and he rode another horse and badly damaged his leg.
Yeah.
So he couldn't ride it. True story.
Yeah.
So the jockey from the West, from California, called Wolf, Wolfe, Wolf, who was actually a better jockey, probably. Anyway, he came over from California and he won the race. And there is a saying, even now, there's a saying in America, like, see you pal, or it's not pal, it's see you Joe. I think it's see you Joe. And it's a little bit of an insult. And it stems from that race, because Wolf was told to hold him back. And as War Admiral came up on his shoulder, he just turned to the other jockey and said, see you, Joe. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Our producers just sent over some of it. It says it sold over 5.5 million copies on DVD, Seabiscuit, which is the highest dramatic movie. It was a great film,
right.
And like you say, if you say the book's better, it will be one hell of a book.
It's well worth reading. It's not long. It's not tenuous. It would only take you 2 days to read it.
Right.
As opposed to Jonathan Livingston Seagull, it only take you 2 hours to read that.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to Jonathan Livingston Seagull then. What is it exactly?
Okay. I'm talking early 70s. I was at Wolverhampton Wanderers, and I've always been a fan of Neil Diamond. Professional footballers usually train till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and most afternoons are free. You go golfing or whatever you want. One day I was in a record shop, and I saw this album by Neil Diamond. As I said, a great singer, one of my favorites, and it was called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Thought, what's all this about? Took it home, didn't bother playing it. Something must have occurred that afternoon. The next day, my trainer, Sammy Chung, said, oh, Steve, I want you in this afternoon, bit of heading practice. I said, okay, no problem. I went home for my lunch, and at 1 o'clock, I put this album on, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And I just laid on my settee with my headphones on, listening to this album, and I forgot to go training. Got a right rollicking the next day, because my mind was just taken away by all this fantastic LP. So I fell in love with the music. And then I got inured by, well, what's all this all about? Because I could tell it was a little bit spiritual, a little bit about whether it be God or not your God, but somebody else's God. I'm not quite sure. So I went out and bought the book, and I read the book that afternoon. It's a very short read, and it's about a seagull who learns to fly, which sounds silly, but he wasn't interested in eating like most seagulls are. He was interested in being able to fly at 200 miles an hour. And once he did that, he wanted to fly at 240 miles an hour. Then he wanted to fly at 600 miles. And he realized that flight is limited. So eventually, he by thought, is in one country at 1 second, and the next country or the next world. But then you can read it as a silly tale like that. But 2/3 of the way through the book, you're thinking, is this the Son of God? Is this seagull a parody of Jesus? And then once you're into that, you're hooked in, and it's a fabulous book. I must have read it 10 times. In fact, I've got it somewhere here.
To be fair, I never thought about that when I was reading Kes.
Slightly different book. There it is. And I always keep it close.
Have you got it?
Can you see that?
Oh, there it is.
There it is. Yep.
Right.
It's by Richard Bach, who was a jet pilot.
Right.
Anyway, it's just there.
Well,
I
that's
always keep that close.
I don't know about you guys, but honestly, that synopsis has really intrigued me. I'm going to go and read that book. That'll be the next book I read.
Well, I'll tell you what,
You'll
I'm
enjoy
going to
it.
let you tell me what it's all about after you've read it. So your number 3, Animal Farm, a massive book.
Yeah.
Do this for
Again, Gary saw the movie, but it was different.
When I was 13, the best fella who I ever met in my life gave me this book to read. It was my dad. And he said, "Here, son, my birthday's a week before Christmas, so I can never remember whether it's a birthday present or a Christmas present. But he gave me this book to read in December when I was 13. He said, 'Here, son, read that book. Tell me what you think.' And as a 13-year-old, I read it, and we had to sit down, and I told him what I thought about these pigs that become human, but really the other animals are no better off because they rebelled against the human farmer. But then the pig, and so I read it on its face value. And a year later, I opened my Christmas present or my birthday present from my dad, and it was Animal Farm. And I says, "Dad, you gave me this last year." He says, "I know you did. I know I did, but you're a year older now. Read it again and tell me what you think." So I did. I read it again, and I got a better understanding of this analogy that Eric Blair was writing about. And so I got to know more about symbolism. And then I'd learned a little bit more at school about the Russian Revolution and the fact that these people it was taking the mickey really out of the Russians. And the following year, for my 15th birthday, I knew before I opened it. I said, "Dad, you've done it again, haven't you?" He says, "Yeah, read it again, son. Tell me what you think."
You said, "I think you're getting away without buying me a present."
Well, how about this for a coincidence, though? This is December. I'm now 15 or 16. As I did my birthday, I read the book and we had a really long discussion about it then. The next month, I did my mock O-level examinations. And once you'd done your mock O-levels, you got told the books that you had to study for your O-levels. And my book was Animal Farm.
Oh, God.
Absolutely fluke. Absolute fluke. I didn't have to read it. I knew everything about it.
Can I just say, it wasn't for your Christmas present, by the way. Because for your Christmas present, I seem to remember you didn't get a football or a football jersey. You got a rugby jersey and a rugby ball.
I did.
I remember that very well from your speech.
Rugby family.
Exactly.
But it's a total coincidence. And in actual fact, in those days, we had to read 2 books, a poetry book, a story book, of which Animal Farm was mine, and we had to do a Shakespearean play. And for some reason that year they picked Julius Caesar. Well, anything historical I'd already read because I'm interested in history.
You're massive.
So anyway, I struck really, really lucky.
If ever I got on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire,
yeah,
and I wanted a phone a friend, I think you would be it. Just the fact, if it was kings and queens, I would say yes. Just ring Steve Kindon. He knows everything about kings and queens.
Thank you.
So your fourth one is Shogun.
Yeah. Again, it's historical. Again, it's true about a sailor called Blackthorn who was marooned in Japan. A shogun is a Japanese war leader. He has to have deference to the emperor, but he basically runs the country. And It's just a fantastic read. Now, Dr. Kildare, whoever that actor was, Richard, can you remember Dr. Kildare? And
We'll get it. We'll definitely get it.
He took the part of Shogun. He did a television series called Shogun. And I enjoyed the series because it brought it to a lot more people. But it didn't compare to the book. The book was fabulous. Shogun was interesting on the television. Not like, as I said, Seabiscuit. The book was great, but the film also was great.
Right.
With Shogun, the film, it wasn't a film, it was a series, about 14, 15 episodes, an hour long. It was very good, but the book was magnificent.
Richard Chamberlain, that wasn't
well
it?
Done, well done. Handsome actor. Yeah, and the same author that wrote Shogun also wrote King Rat, which was a prisoner of war camp thing in Japanese prison, a Japanese prisoner of war camp, which was very, very, very good story as well.
Okay. So your final one was any Agatha Christie. We've gone for And Then They Were None.
Yeah.
Because I have heard of that one.
Okay. I would actually, and it was a very, very good book, but I'd rather read a Miss Marple or a Hercule Poirot. A great heroine and a great hero.
Where would they stand in terms of great detectives, do you think, Steve? You know, I mean, there's a lot of competition, but
I think probably number one detective for me, in my mind, would always be Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And after Sherlock Holmes, I think Poirot and Marple are up there with them.
Yeah.
Not quite up to Sherlock Holmes, but certainly in the top 5.
Yeah.
Of course, the Americans would disagree. They'd rather have Starsky and Hutch.
Here's a question for you. Yeah. Who's your best Poirot? Because there have been a few.
Oh, without a doubt, the guy on the television.
Suchet.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Was it John Parkin who had Poirot?
He did, and he was a Suchet man. I threw Peter Ustinov into the mix, but he wasn't having that.
I mean, John Parkin was a massive Poirot fan. Amazing.
Yeah, I like the Gimme 5 podcast because, it's crazy.
Right, we're going to move on to films now, Stevie. Your top 5 films.
Some great choices there.
Yeah, great choices in the books. But your top 5 films, no particular order. Off you go, sir.
The Quiet Man. A John Ford film set on the west coast of Ireland.
Yeah, my dad made me watch this. He was a massive John Wayne fan.
Yeah. Sergeant York. True story. The star was Gary Cooper, who is probably my all-time favourite actor.
Right.
Loved him to bits. Ward Bond supported him in it, but the family set up there was the support. Fantastic film. True story.
Yeah.
I quite like Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
In fact, I more than quite like it. And I always choke at the end. I've already intimated to you about Animal Farm. I had a bit of a love affair with my dad, and Field of Dreams is all about his dad trying to find his dad. What were the whispers? What did he dream about, Gary? Build it and he will come.
Yeah.
Build it and he will come. And he thought it was all about the baseball player. And of course, it was about his dad.
Yeah.
And right at the end of the shot, the actor, the good-looking actor, said to him,
Kevin Costner.
No, the other one, the
yeah.
baseball player, the baseball player.
Yeah.
And then he winked over to the catcher, and it was his dad.
Yeah.
And I got a shiver down my spine just describing it to you. And that moment is just very upsetting for me, but very nice for me. Not upsetting in a nice way. Does that make sense? I'm not sure. Yeah. I feel a warmth. I feel a warmth.
So your other two, quickly, then we'll have a talk about the films. Your other 2 films were?
Well, I'd like to. I will say Seabiscuit. I've got Seabiscuit permanently on record in my diary, in my catalogue on the television. I never wipe Seabiscuit off. So, although it's a bit one thought, but as well as a good book, it was a great film. So why not have it twice if it's so great?
Yeah.
And then really, I'm not sure. Sometimes it's giving the game away a little bit again, but I once saw two fellas try and move a piano up a flight of stairs. and you know, there you go, lads. You know what I'm talking about. And you're smiling straight away. And it's just funny.
I thought you were on about when we tried to move Gaz to his house in Doncaster then. Because that was comical, wasn't it?
I think the film was called The Piano Movers, wasn't it, Gary?
No.
What was it called?
Oh, Christ.
Anyway, I've got that film on a video. Unfortunately, I can't play it now.
It was called The Music Box. The Music
Box, yeah.
Was it called? It might well have been.
That was their
well done.
The Oscar for that, then, The Music Box.
I think so, yeah.
I'm not sure.
I mean, it was a fantastic. I mean, the scene itself is outstanding. Oh. And when they get to the top of it, and then they realise they could have come the other way down, they went back down to get it. Oh, it's genius.
Mega, absolute genius.
And they have to get up in the house, and it's just if no one's ever seen that, you have to watch.
It actually won the Oscar as the best short subject of 1932, the only such honour to be bestowed on Laurel and Hardy. And it was also the first film short to be honoured in such a way. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Quiet. Why Quiet Man? Why is that?
I don't know. I if you sat watching it with me, I'd spoil it for you because I can quote every single line prior to them saying it. You know, there's a counter. There's a guy in it called Barry Fitzgerald, who's a typical little Irishman who's a matchmaker.
Yeah,
and he doesn't steal the show, but he's wonderful in it. Absolutely marvelous in it.
Is there a big like fight scene where everyone?
Oh well, yeah, and it's John Wayne against Victor McHaglen.
Yes.
And Victor McHaglen, in actual fact, in real life, fought against a heavyweight champion of the world, arguably the greatest ever heavyweight champion of the world.
Who?
Just prior to this First World War, I think it was 1908 or 1903, Jack Johnson. Won the world title. And he was so far ahead of his game because he didn't just wade in trying to not. He boxed like Ali did, and he was fantastic. And I think it was either in training or as an exhibition fight. Around about 1915, 1917, something like that, he actually fought against Victor McHaglen.
Wow.
So Victor McHaglen, although he's a big lad and an actor, he could fight.
Right.
In true. Yeah.
There was a massive build-up to the fight when they were coming from all over. It's a long time since my dad made me watch it, but they seem to be coming from all over the place for this fight and just.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody knew about it because he backed away. He was a fighter himself. This is the story in The Quiet Man. John Wayne was an ex-boxer who had killed a man in the ring.
Right.
And then he left America with this dreadful onus on him, and he bought this little house in Ireland, and he wanted to live quietly by himself. And he certainly didn't want to fight anybody because he didn't like to use his fists anymore because he'd killed a man.
Right.
And of course, he fell in love with Victor McHaglen's sister, and it carried on from there. They were the big landowners next door.
Yeah.
And there's a horse race in the film. There's this big fight in the film, and of course, they all live happily ever after with a pint of Guinness in their hands. It's just a super film for me. It's a bit of escapism.
It says Victor McHaglen was 64 and in poor health at the time of filming, so his fight with John Wayne had to be filmed very carefully.
Yeah, I knew that. It was filmed over 2 or 3 days.
Right. Your other one that we haven't really talked much about is Sergeant York, Gary Cooper, who I'm pretty sure I've told you that's who I was named after. Gary Cooper is why I'm called Gary.
Right.
Was that about was it the most decorated soldier in World War One, American soldier?
Most decorated American soldier. Yeah. And he was a pacifist. He was a drunk and you'd call him a teddy boy, not a teddy boy, a wild man in his teenage years.
Yeah.
And in his early 20s, he went berserk. He was going off the rails because he was poor and he had a mother, didn't have a father. His father had died, and he had 2 younger children, and he had to go to work. He had to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so if he wasn't working, he got drunk. And then very religious in that part of America, Tennessee, Kentucky, all around there. And he found God. And he found Jesus, and he found God. And then he was called up into the army. And he said to the preacher, I'm not going to fight. I've no quarrel with the Germans. It's not my war. He says, well, you have to, or else they'll put you in prison. No, I'll tell them I'm not going to fight. I'm a conscientious objector. Anyway, he went and joined the army. And of course, he took the mickey out of him in training because it was on his record that he was a conscientious objector. But he was also an absolute crack marksman. We'd seen that earlier in the film. He was a crack marksman with his rifle. And when he went to rifle training, he's hit the bullseye 10 out of 10. And they can't believe that this man who doesn't want to fight is so good with a gun. Anyway, later on, another half hour passes, and he's in France, and the Germans bushwhacked his company. And by this time, he's corporal. He's the corporal. And all the officers and the sergeants were either injured or killed. And the last sergeant said, York, take over. So he said, right, all you stay there, I'll go get them. So he a bit lucky, chases up the hill, and he caught them on a flank, and he just went ping, one went down, ping, one went down, ping. And eventually, I think something like, there were about 11 of them in this company left, 11 Americans, and they captured nearly 200 Germans.
Wow.
Right.
They gave up and put their hands up and let the belts down, and they marched them back to their own lines.
Incredible. Incredible.
True story. And the French gave Sergeant York their greatest honour, something de guerre, the Medal of War. The British gave them the Distinguished Service Medal or something. The American gave them their big top award. And he went back and he had a ticker tape reception in New York. And he went home, and the folks of Tennessee had granted him this bottom land, and which would plough more easily than the top land where he'd been brought up on. And they gave him a house, and it's just a lovely story.
Yeah.
And it's true. And it's true.
So if you haven't seen this story, bit of a spoiler alert there from Kindo.
I do.
The highest grossing film of 1941, I've just been told.
Right.
And still remains one of the highest grossing films of all time.
Well, of course, 1941 was the year that America joined the Second World War. December the 7th, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Yeah. And so a film made in 1941 would be about the First World War, would be there to encourage people to sign up for the Second World War.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it must have been.
Go on.
It must have been, such a phenomenon at the time to go out and see that and really get the fire stoked, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So we talked a bit about Field of Dreams and what it means to you. Music Box, I know that's what's coming up in your comedians. We can talk about that in a bit. But Seabiscuit, you've already said. I mean, as you know, I'm a massive fan of horse racing. So anything. I loved Secretariat. Did you see Secretariat?
Yeah.
I think they were I just love them sort of films. So yeah, I'm well happy with those film choices.
As an academic, my fundamental bugbear with the show Give Me 5 is that you will not learn anything by listening to it.
Good lad. Thank
So
you.
we're moving on to your comedians now, your top 5 comics in no particular order. Off you go.
No particular order. One of them is a duo, Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah.
If you'll allow duos. And another of them is part a duo, but I didn't really appreciate his mate quite as much. So I'm going to pick Ronnie Barker on his own.
Yeah.
Ronnie Barker was an absolute comic genius.
Brilliant.
And of course, he wrote 90% of his material.
Right.
And a guy a little bit older than Ronnie Barker, who did the same, he wrote most of all his material. And he was tone deaf. He was absolutely deaf as a doorpost. And it was Eric Sykes.
Yeah.
Again, a comic genius.
Yep.
My era was Tommy Cooper.
Okay.
When I was growing up, I can remember what he was on the Royal Command Performance. And my mum, I'd never heard of him. My mum, I don't know, I might have been 8 or 10. I don't know. My mum said, Stephen, come and watch this. You'll like this, man. And I think it was Tommy Trinder, or probably Tommy Trinder, or it might have been Bruce Forsyth, introduced Tommy Cooper. And nobody walked on. And all the audience started to laugh. And then somebody started banging the back of the curtain as though they didn't know where the curtain joined. And everybody in the audience is laughing. It could have been anybody banging the curtain, but they knew what to expect. And eventually, Tommy Cooper half fell through the gap in the curtains.
Yeah.
And everybody just fell apart laughing. He walked up to the microphone and he went, and he'd done a minute of his act. And he only probably got 4 minutes on the Royal Command Performance. He'd done a minute of his act, and all he'd done was.
Yeah, there's not many.
Can you imagine, lads, rehearsing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, what's going to happen, Tommy? I'm going to introduce you. What's going to happen then? Well, I'll hit the curtain a little bit. Okay. Right. Okay. And then I'll pretend somebody's pushed me through. Yeah. Okay, Tom. Yeah. Yeah. And then I'll go to the microphone. I'll go. And the guy will say, "Well, okay, Dave, I've got that, Tommy. So what's that? 15 seconds? No. That'll be a minute because of the laughing." Absolute comic genius.
Genius.
And although he's very, very non-you now, of course, with his sexual overtures, but I always enjoyed Benny Hill.
Okay, yeah, of the time, not a problem at all, is he?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what it is. It's comedy of the time.
Well, and attested to by the fact that he was so popular in America as well, wasn't
America.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah, he was a bit samey, but I still laughed.
Exactly. I loved it as a kid. I'm guessing I was probably single fingers to 10, 11. I loved him. Absolutely loved the Benny Hill show. Because there's also a little bit of raunchiness in it as well, which I think as a young male of 10, 11, 12, I enjoyed.
Yeah. It was suggestive without being crude.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And when we were talking earlier about that great film, The Music Box, if anybody out there is listening to this and they want to try and get a film called The Plank.
Oh, Eric Sykes.
About moving a plank of wood from a building site. It's genius. It is comic genius.
Yeah.
The Plank by Eric Sykes. And it's a silent movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
It is genius.
When I was a redcoat at Butlins in 85, 86, I actually went to see Eric Sykes in Run for Your Wife at the Opera House, the Grand Theatre at Blackpool. Him and Les Dawson were in it. And to be fair, Les Dawson, brilliant. But Eric Sykes just stole the whole show. He just, like you said, absolute comic genius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He must have had the same problem pitching that film as Tommy Cooper did when he was explaining his act for the Royal.
Yeah.
He said,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can you imagine it, Rod?
Yeah.
Right, what's going to happen now? Well, I'm going to put this plank on my shoulder, right? And when I turn around, that's not funny. That's not funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be.
It will be.
It wasn't funny. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
It was just laughing from start to finish. It was. And there's quite a few stars in it as well, stars of the day, minor stars sort of thing, super.
Yeah.
The one that we've lost over really is Ronnie Barker.
Yeah. A lot of people just say, well, the two Ronnies. Ronnie Barker wrote most of them, a lot of them, not most, but a lot of the material. And of course, he did his little bit of acting in Porridge and Open All Hours. So he was a comic actor. The other one that really nearly got a shout for me was Leonard Rossiter as a comic actor.
Yeah.
Ronnie Barker, of course, did his stand-up as well and did his show with the two Ronnies. I remember the two Ronnies nearly every week. Ronnie Corbett had a sit down in a chair and a long monologue in a chair.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Barker had his own, like 2 or 3 minutes. And I always thought that the Ronnie Barker 2 minutes on his own was, especially when he got into tongue-twisting tales, was absolute genius.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolute genius. Yeah.
You can see when you watch David Jason, who's obviously revered as possibly the second greatest comedy character actor in this country. But when you watch him, you can see what he learned from Barker, can't you? Which was
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think out of the two Ronnies, I thought Ronnie Barker was, the one that you.
Yeah.
Oh. I like Ronnie Corbett, and I thought he was brilliant in Sorry, but
yes, likewise, and I've nothing against. Same as Morecambe and Wise.
Yeah,
everybody would say the funny one was Eric Morecambe.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not a slant on Ernie Wise.
No.
Exactly. Did you know that Tommy Cooper was Welsh? By the way, I don't know if I can't believe Rod's not come in with this one yet.
I was just keeping it up my sleeve. There's a lovely statue of him now in Caerphilly, Steve. If ever you find yourself at a loose end down there, you've got to pay a visit. Gary's done it.
We seem to talk about this statue every single podcast. How he gets on.
I do have a few quid from the Caerphilly Tourist Board, but I'm not ashamed.
It is a great statue, though.
Incidentally, every year now in Caerphilly Castle, they hold the annual Tommy Cooper Festival. You see what they did there? It's massively popular. Yeah, so that's another thing.
I need to go one year for that.
Yeah. I think you prefer it to the medieval fair.
I'll even pay £5 to get in, unlike you three did. Unbelievable.
In real life, Tommy Cooper was offered a promotion. He did his national service. And he was in the household cavalry, and he was offered a promotion to corporal. And he says, "No, thank you. No, I don't really want that." He says, "Well, you'd get more money. You'd be able to send more money back home to your parents. Why don't you want the promotion?" He says, "I like my rank now, Trooper Cooper." Trooper Cooper. Absolute genius. Yeah.
So your final category songs, your top 5 songs.
Yeah. It's a funny thing about this. I'm not a great lover too much of any of the artists. It's just the one-off songs that attract me to this list.
Right.
I know every word backwards, inside out, upside down to Streets of London by Ralph McTell.
To be honest,
it's very poignant.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking, I sometimes thought, well, if you went on Desert Island Discs, one of the things is the fact that you're on your own. You got a coat for yourself on this desert island. So would I particularly want that record with me? How can you tell me you're lonely? And say for you that, well, I am bloody lonely. I'm on a desert island. Anyway, that aside, I think Streets of London, the words to Streets of London are fantastic. And if you ever Google or what do you call it? Get that station where you get people up, and you can hear Ralph McTell singing this song when he's about 19, and you can also hear him singing the song when he's about 59. And on one of the views, it's split half and half. It's so magical because he's got the youthfulness of voice and they got the gravity of the voice in the second half. It's just beautiful. The words to Piano Man by a wonderful American who I'm not a great lover of Americans, but Piano Man is another one where the words just kill me. Yeah, I just think it's genius. Everybody talks about you having a whiskey tonight? You having a red wine? Do you fancy a gin and tonic? But one of the first lines in this song, he talks about a tonic and gin. Genius, just to twist that round.
I remember you telling me this during one of our car journeys to and from somewhere. Probably the same journey where you put unleaded in your diesel car, which I found funnier than it should have been.
Bizarrely enough, the two songs that you mentioned there have a very, very similar chord progression. So you could literally, if you just had it as a backing track, you could sing both songs over the top of the same music. Really, I could demonstrate.
There's a musician for you, Gary.
Yeah, he is though, isn't he? He does everything, Rob. Yeah. Oh, by the way, our producer Ian Parsons put McTell won the Ivor Novello Award for songwriting, The Streets of London in 1974. And I'm guessing Ivor Novello, that's another Welsh thing, is it?
Yeah. You can visit his birthplace, Gaz. I can see a little tour lined up for you when you come down here.
Another one, again, it's a song where the words are everything. It was made famous by Cat Stevens, and it's Father and Son.
Yeah.
Beautiful song.
And it's a father I had this love affair with my own dad, and it's his dad just trying to give him advice. You're so young, it's not time to make a change. Just relax, take it easy. But then the son, how can I try to explain? It's just a different generation. That's all.
I love that lyric.
It's the father who loves the son.
Yeah.
Who's trying to help his son.
Yeah.
And then it's the son who actually loves the father who's saying, Dad, I've got to do it my own way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just brilliant.
Find a girl, settle down, and then read Animal Farm again.
Yeah. My fourth one is a group. I probably wouldn't know this record, and not many people will, but I actually knew the group personally. Electric Light Orchestra, or ELO.
Yeah.
The drummer was Bev Bevan, ex-Move, who became a personal friend because he's a big Wolverhampton Wanderers fan. And most people quote some perhaps 10 big hits that ELO had. But on one of their albums was a song, and it was called Waterfall.
Right.
And it's just a simple song, but again, it just moves me emotionally every time I hear it. I've always had a love affair with waterfalls for some reason. My wife's father, my father-in-law, was actually, he sold paintings. He was a very good artist, but he was a very good copier of art. So he I've got hung up somewhere here a fabulous painting of the Hay Wain, the famous constable painting that my father-in-law, before he passed away, he copied that painting.
Brilliant.
Anyway, I got a calendar one year. I was a good age, probably 35. I'd finished my football career. Somebody gave me this calendar, and December was a picture of this waterfall, and it just said on it a comment by Ovid, who's a Greek philosopher, and he said, "What is harder than rock? What is softer than water? But soft water hollows out hard rock." And then it had a little dash, and it said, "Persevere."
God.
So that effect of that waterfall with the, not hole, but the dip in the rock face where the water over millions of years has eked out and warped away that rock face.
Yeah.
Persevere, and even soft water will hollow out hard rock.
Yeah.
So just a little comment, and I went home with it, and I said to him, Frank, look at that, isn't that brilliant? And 2 weeks later, he gave me this painting, and he painted that picture in my calendar.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, yeah.
And ELO is a greeting in Doncaster, isn't it, Gaz? ELO.
Hello.
If it's not, it should be.
That's racist, that is. Unbelievable. Your final choice?
Again, it's a funny thing there, isn't it? I wouldn't pick Ralph McTell or Cat Stevens as my favourite group or my favourite,
Yeah.
But there's something about the individual songs that I just fell in love with. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
But you only picked 4 then?
Yeah, because those 4 stand out for me more than I could add any one of 20. I mean, if you want a song about lyrics, it's got to be Paul McCartney, who came down from breakfast for breakfast one day singing Scrambled Eggs. Didn't he? He was humming do 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 scrambled eggs, do 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 scrambled eggs. And someone said to him, "What's that you humming?" And he said, "I don't know. I think I must have heard it on the radio." And they said to him, No, we've not heard that on the radio. You've thought of that tune. So he went down and wrote Yesterday.
I preferred Scrambled Eggs.
It's the most recorded. Yesterday, I think, is the most recorded track of all time by so many different artists.
Is it? And some wonderful versions too.
Wow.
Yeah. So have you seen the film Yesterday, by the way?
I've seen it, yeah.
No.
It's the lad from
With who
EastEnders,
in
isn't
it?
it?
It's a Richard Curtis film, but it's Richard Curtis's take on how the world might have been if yesterday was only known by one particular person, or if the Beatles didn't exist. And so this guy then, he exactly the same premise, Steve, really. He's got an idea, and then he starts, singing it, and people are going, what the hell is that song? And he says, it's Paul McCartney and John Lennon. And they say, who? Yeah. Nobody's heard of the Beatles. And so all of a sudden, he jumps on it, and that's when the fun starts.
Yeah, Danny Boyle, wasn't it? Produced it.
Danny Boyle, yeah. It's a great film. You must watch it.
I will do. I like Richard Curtis.
Yeah.
I think Give Me 5 would be my favourite podcast. If I only listened to a podcast.
So your final category is one that everybody that we have on has to choose. That's your top 5 dinner guests. And I mean, I make a list. We've done a league table. I'm guessing I'm going to have to write all your 5 to add to the table, because I don't think anyone will have picked any of the 5 you're going to come across.
I think, no, surely.
Oh, honestly, I don't think anyone's picked your 5.
Number 5, I think, is a very regular one.
Go on.
This was the easiest selection for me to pick, because I'd done it in my own quiz.
All right,
We decided one month to have more of a discussion thing. And in my family, when we're all on Zoom, there's about 14 different screens, and they gave me all their answers or opinions. And Richard Attenborough appeared on 4 of the screens as a wanted dinner guest.
It was David Attenborough.
Pardon?
David Attenborough, wasn't it?
Oh, David Attenborough. I'm sorry, not Richard. David Attenborough. Yeah. So that quite surprised me.
Doesn't it show, though, how popular he must be if he gets in before his brother, who's Santa Claus?
A miracle.
Brilliant. So I've picked people who, I love my history, and I've picked people who, in my opinion, have absolutely stamped their names on their footwork of history as they've tread the earth and 3 of them are warriors. My 5 people I would like at my dinner table are Genghis Khan,
obviously,
of the Mongol Empire, Napoleon of the French Empire,
yep,
Julius Caesar of the Roman Empire, Winston Churchill of the British Empire, and Jesus Christ.
Just to break it all up. If it kicks off.
just for a bit of humour.
Yeah. Wow, that is a hell of a list. And
It's a hell of a list, and I want to know why.
Are you just throwing Jesus in there to save on the wine bill?
No, to make sure we don't run out of fish and bread.
Napoleon's a right, he says. It's fine.
Well, it's a hell of a... So Genghis Khan. Yeah.
Genghis Khan.
I love my history, and one of the things I like to do about people like Julius Caesar and about Genghis Khan and people that... What were we doing in our country when they were doing what they were doing in their country? And Genghis Khan is about the time of King Richard, the Lionheart, and you know, Prince John, who became King John, fighting Robin Hood, if you believe the myth. Yeah. But anyway, so we were quite backward. And at that time, Genghis Khan, who had a traumatic upbringing, became the leader. The great Genghis Khan wasn't his name. Genghis Khan means great leader, great Khan. And all these Mongol tribes, they were little tribes, and he gathered them all together. And most people know about the Roman Empire. And I think I'm right in saying that the Roman Empire covered what are now 25 different countries. They conquered England and Wales, although they didn't find a problem with Wales, obviously. They conquered what we know as Portugal and Spain and France. They conquered Belgium. They conquered half of Germany. They conquered, well, they were Italian. They conquered Greece and Egypt and Algeria. And I think they conquered what is now 25 different countries. And everybody knows a little bit about the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire stretched for 400 million square miles.
Yeah, that's incredible in itself, isn't it?
Genghis Khan's conquest was 900 million. Genghis Khan conquered twice as much as the Romans in area. In area. For every square yard the Romans conquered, Genghis Khan conquered 2 of them. Now, quite rightly, you could say most of it was barren land, empty land, Mongolia, totally barren, the steppes of Russia. But he conquered the whole of what we know now as China. Well, not as we know now, because he didn't go that far south, but he conquered that whole mass of land between China, well, half of China as we know it now, half of Russia as we know it now, nearly got Pakistan and as we know it now, and Afghanistan and half of India, and nearly as far as Vienna in Europe.
Guessing
it was a massive empire.
Like I say, I'm guessing he was a bit pissed off when William got the title, William the Conqueror, because I don't think he conquered half as much.
Well, he was before him. He was 200 years earlier. But
so he'd already got the name.
He'd already got the name. Yeah.
See, I learn something every day, Kindon.
But his father was a tribe leader, and his father was poisoned by his pal, and so. But when he's about 12, he's sold into slavery. He's a slave. And before he's 50, he owns half the world.
It's unbelievable. Absolutely amazing.
I mean, what sort of life is that?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Just, there must be something about the man, an inner strength, an inner genius. I don't know. Napoleon came from nowhere, and yet he crowned himself in 1804 in Notre Dame Cathedral, Emperor of France.
Yeah.
He must have been a genius.
Yeah. They obviously had something about them, those fellas, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, you could say Gaius Marius or Sulla or Nero or any of the other Roman emperors or Cicero, anybody that wrote about the empire. But most people name a Roman, Julius Caesar. For most people, Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
Do you know what they call the Emperor of Germany? Did you know what their title? They didn't call him a king or an emperor.
Nope.
Was he? He's on the Kaiser.
It was Kaiser.
Kaiser, yeah.
That was named after Caesar.
Oh, Kaiser. Oh, okay. Yeah, right. That's a great fact, isn't it? Kaiser.
Right. Do you know what they call the Emperor of Russia?
Tsar.
Tsar.
That's named after Caesar.
Caesar.
The Tsar and the Kaiser is a derivation of Caesar.
Right.
Yeah.
Julius Caesar was never emperor of Rome. His great nephew was the first emperor. But Augustus Octavian took the name of Caesar. The next emperor, Tiberius, wasn't a relation of Julius Caesar, but he called himself Tiberius Caesar.
It all makes sense now.
The next one was Caligula, who called himself Caligula Caesar. And the next one, the next one was the slavering one.
Well, even the main monkey in Planet of the Apes.
Claudius, and then Nero. And they were all Caesarian.
Yeah.
Named after Julius Caesar.
Wow.
What's that got to do with not having a baby out of your noo-noo then? A cesarean.
Well, I know. I don't know whether that is. I don't know whether Julius Caesar was born that way. I don't know.
Well, every time he used to leave a house, he'd go out through the window, apparently.
I'm guessing we know what salad you're having on this dinner party.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then there was an Englishman who he went to war as a correspondent. He fought against these in the Sudan. He actually took part. Winston Churchill took part of the last cavalry charge the British Army ever made.
Right.
And that was in the Sudan against the dervishes. And then in the Boer War, he was a correspondent and he was captured, and yet he escaped and made world news. He went into politics, and he was a flawed genius. He made many, many mistakes. But thank God we had him in the Second World War as an inspiration.
Yeah.
A total inspiration. And for the last 40 years, I've earned my living, even though I've got a speech impediment. I've earned my living doing speeches. Well, Winston Churchill had a slight speech impediment, but he stood up, and his speeches are absolute legend. Yeah. And not only his speeches, but his little put downs in the House of Commons as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, a lady MP once said to her, "Sir, you are drunk." And he was. It was in the 1950s, and he was drunk. And she sat down, and he stood up. He said, "Madam, you are ugly. In the morning, I'll be sober." Great little put down.
Is she the one who said to him, "If I was married to you, I'd give you poison"? And he said, "If I was married to you..."
The one I just mentioned was Barbara Braddock, who was MP for Huyton in Liverpool. The one that you're on about is Lady Astor, and that was in the 1930s. And Winston was up on his feet saying, "Germany is the menace. We must rearm. We must have soldiers. We must have aeroplanes. We must rearm." And she stood up. She'd heard enough of this warmonger. And he said, "Sir, if you were my husband, I'd put poison in your tea." And he stood up and said, "Madam, if you were my wife, I'd drink it."
Brilliant.
You know, that's how we've earned our living, lads. But great repartee that.
We've just been given from our producer Ian Parsons. Pliny the Elder theorized that Julius Caesar's name came from an ancestor who was born by the Caesarean section.
Okay.
I think that's an intersection just outside of Birmingham, isn't it?
Is it just off Spaghetti Junction?
just off Spaghetti Junction. Have you been to the war rooms, Steve? The Churchill war rooms in London?
Oh yes, twice.
I was lucky enough to do it just before lockdown. It's brilliant, isn't it, to see the place that we orchestrated the whole thing from.
Absolutely. But what surprised me more than anything, I expected it to be 3 times as big.
Yeah, absolutely.
The smallness of the impact, they must have been falling over each other. Yeah. But if you've never done that, Gaz, you ought to do it.
I've never done it. You're right. I've never done it, and I'll certainly put it on my list.
Don't go and watch it where it is, Gary. They're moving it to Cardiff.
Yeah.
Obviously.
They are.
Obviously, they're moving it to Cardiff.
You can go there right after you've been to Ivan Novella's birthplace.
And the Tommy Cooper Festival. I'll be there.
The festival, yeah.
Your last one's Jesus Christ.
I thought of another film I'll have, Rod. Zulu.
Oh, Zulu. Well, it's
when they were singing Men of Harley.
That's the Cardiff City anthem now. We all sing that before they come out. And that's one of my abiding memories of my dad there. Once he finished sports writing, you knew my father, Steve, and he'd sit there in the disabled area. But once Men of Harlech came on, conversation had to stop, just so when it got to the bit that went, da, 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 he could go. Yeah. And as did all the people in the disabled. And then towards the end, there was a guy who came in front of him who had a big Motability scooter. And they got on quite well in the end. But my father took an instant dislike to him because he would park up right in front of my dad, and he had a sticker on the back of this scooter that said, "Drive it like you stole it." And he'd press a button about 30 seconds before kickoff, and this thing would elevate on a hydraulic thing, go up about. My father's like, "Look at this bastard here."
How did we get to Wales again from this?
No, Steve got me started on that, Ben.
So your final dinner party guest is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
He was a good bloke, wasn't he?
Why?
All right, didn't he?
Why? If you gave me the choice between having another 100 people or Jesus on his own, I'd take Jesus on his own.
Right.
And the first question, of course, is, are you the Son of God?
What if he says no?
It's a short evening.
Yeah. We'll just go to McDonald's.
Ronald McDonald in instead.
Yeah. I love my history, lads. And I've just told you a little bit about Genghis Khan, who lived 1300 and some. And I've told you a little bit, very little, about Napoleon, who crowned himself in 1804, Julius Caesar, who was 50 years to 100 years before Christ, and Churchill, who was 2,000 years after Christ. It's funny, isn't it? Genghis Khan, 1300, oh, that's years after Christ, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. Napoleon, 18, oh, that's years after Christ. Julius Caesar, that's before Christ. 4 men who conquered half of the known world. Churchill, together with a man who supposedly was born in a stable, to a virgin and a carpenter, and yet Genghis Khan was born 1300 years after this carpenter's son. It doesn't say nowhere in, even though Genghis Khan conquered 900 million square miles, it doesn't say that this carpenter's son was born 1,300 years before Genghis Khan.
No.
Genghis Khan was born 1,300 years after this, please forgive me, but after this nothing person who, after he was born, we hear nothing about for 12 years and hear very little about for the next 20 years. And then when he's 30, we hear a little bit about him for 6 months of his life. And that was it. And he died, and perhaps, and I believe he was, but perhaps resurrected 3 days later, but still left us 40 days after that. And there might be myths about it. It might all be a myth, but for some reason, lads, Julius Caesar was born, he died 40 years before Jesus was born. It does never in the book say that this lad in Bethlehem was born 40 years after Julius Caesar died.
Mm. No, that's very true. Of course, Bethlehem's in Wales.
There must be something about the guy, mustn't there?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And
he wasn't a military leader. He wasn't a political leader. He wasn't a great person, please forgive me, in the likes of the lady in India, Mother Teresa, who, I don't know, he was more nondescript. He was more invisible for great parts of his life. He was only visible for a very short period of time, and yet is praised to and prayed to and revered by millions and millions of people around the world.
Mm. And whether you accept that there was any divinity about the man, the fact is that he must have existed and he must have had this impact on the world. So for that reason,
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And also we get presents in December, and we get chocolate eggs around March and April time, don't we? So power to him.
That's a double bonus.
Yeah.
Double bonus.
He works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Well.
Brilliant, Steve. Well, that was well justified. And who can argue with Jesus being heading up that list? I think he's got to go in at number one.
He's going on. I'm putting him on the list, and he'll join the likes of John Cooper Clarke, Stan Quinnell, Muhammad Ali, Dolly Parton, Jesus Christ, and Shania Twain on the same bill. Marvellous.
They said it couldn't be done.
Listen, that's a great list. Your books, Seabiscuit, Animal Farm, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Shogun, and any Agatha Christie. Your films were The Quiet Man, Sergeant York, Field of Dreams, Seabiscuit, and The Music Box. Comedians Laurel and Hardy, Ronnie Barker, Eric Sykes, Tommy Cooper, Benny Hill. Songs, Streets of London, Piano Man, Father and Son, Waterfall, and Yesterday. And your dinner guests, of course, Genghis Khan, Napoleon, Julius Caesar, Winston Churchill, oh yes, and Jesus Christ. Marvellous, Steve.
Outstanding. Well, Steve, we knew that it would be entertaining. That was never in doubt. But it's also been, I think, a little bit thought-provoking. And a bit cerebral, which I like about this. This program needed a bit of culture.
Yeah, I've learned things today. That's the main thing. I've learned things.
But above all, it's been an absolute pleasure, Steve. Thanks so much for finding the time to join us here today. And we wish you well and look forward to seeing you in the new world.
Well, thank you very, very much, lads. It's been great to see you both. You've been good friends of mine for many a year. I've not had a good time over the last 12 months, but I'm coming out of the doldrums and you two are helping me along. Thanks a lot.
You're a force of nature, Steve, and we can't wait to see you firing on all cylinders.
Exactly.
Okay, lads.
There's no better sight than at a dinner when Kindo, get warmed up, son, you're coming on. And he goes off on this bloody thing. Kindon in full flight, skipping is a joy to be seen. We need to see it again very, very soon.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, lads.
Cheers.
Bye-bye for
Cheers,
now.
Kindon.
Bye-bye.
I did love listening to the Gimme 5 podcast. My wife, on the other hand, she's not so keen. Luckily, she have got her own radio.
So this is it, I guess, the calm after the storm. Steve Kindon has left the building, and how good was that? He was superb, wasn't he?
Brilliant. Educational as well, as we knew it would be. His passion and his knowledge for things is second to none.
Super. And what a dinner party that would have been. You know that moment at the end of the dinner party when all the guests file out and you just close the door after the last one's gone and breathe a sigh of relief? You'd be like that. Oh, thank God we got away with that. Hey?
Oh, my God.
Could have been a nightmare, but it worked, I think. And then Genghis Khan knocks the door and says, I think they left my phone on the table. Could have got a bit territorial around that table, mine, couldn't it?
Oh, my God, not half.
You know, telling them where to sit at the start of the night. You have that seat. No, I'll have all of these.
Yeah. Julius, as the elder statesman, I shall get first choice. That's how thick I am. I didn't realise he was older than Jesus.
No. Yeah. I bet, you know, once someone points out the fact that they haven't got a BC or in their name, you know, everyone, Jesus Christ is the point of reference as far as dates are concerned. That would have kicked it off, wouldn't it?
Oh, not half. Yeah. Not half. Brilliant, though. Yeah.
But you couldn't really have had it before, because it would have been a BJ, and that's got a different sort of 10 years BJ. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. It's at least 10 years now.
Well, we always like to finish on a highbrow tone, and you know, I think we certainly brought it back to the level that this program should be at, because
far too highbrow.
He dragged us up a notch or two there, and it needed that, I think, didn't it?
Yeah, we're gonna get to different people watching this one and listening to this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, even we've been sort of thinking, are those characters going to come up in other people's lists? But I'm wondering whether Books is going to come up in anybody's list.
No, they're probably not. I mean,
probably
if we can link John Parkins and Kindo's together.
Yeah, that's a bit of yin and yang.
Mentioned them both. David Suchet.
Yeah, they did actually. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Poirot's doing well on these lists.
He's done well, Poirot.
Well, a big thank you to Steve Kindon, wherever he's listening from now. I dare say he's not. He's probably reading already, isn't he? But
he'll be on that Seagull thing again, definitely.
Yeah, and he certainly sorted out my anniversary present, which is coming up in a few days. I think Debbie will be unwrapping a copy of Seabiscuit.
No, I've got some biscuits.
Oh, they're nice, these sea biscuits, aren't they?
Sea biscuits.
Well, that was another installation of the Gimme 5 podcast, and I certainly enjoyed it. I'm sure you did, Gaz, and we hope that you did in podcast world. And that's a theme park, I think. It's going to be open soon. You've got to be this tall to ride most of them, but that sounds wrong in itself.
It does sound very wrong. You've got to be so high to ride. I don't think that's the thing, to be fair.
Yeah, I think we better get out of here before I say something else. But we'll see you next time on the Gimme 5 podcast. This has been a Tis Done production, courtesy of the brilliant Mr. Ian Parsons. He's in the background behind the curtain, just like the grand old wizard. Nothing to do with the Ku Klux Klan, by the way. Right, on that note, we really are out.